And so with that, the first plank of our Openness in Government initiative is to require real financial disclosure from the governor. As I said, Montana is one of only 3 states that doesn't require an annual financial disclosure from the governor. We're one of only 9 states that doesn't require such a disclosure from a governor's spouse. The problem has been identified by the Center for Public Integrity. We got an F rating. We're going to fix it. We're going to introduce legislation that's going to require our top elected official to file a personal financial disclosure statement. We require it of our federal delegation. Danny Reberg, Max Baucus, John Tester, they all have to file personal financial disclosure statements. We require it of our top federal elected officials. We ought to require the same of our top state elected official. And this isn't about picking on any one person in particular. This, again, is about honesty in government. It's about sunshine and light bulbs. It's about letting the public form its own opinion as to whether or not there may be a conflict of interest on the part of a sitting governor and his personal financial and his or her personal financial holdings and any initiatives he or she may be pushing through the office of governor. We're going to fix that. We don't want to have any appearance of impropriety on the part of our governor. Montanans deserve better. The second plank is to prohibit constituency counts and require full retroactive disclosure. Roy Brown's going to talk about this, and because he led on this issue in the state legislature. He led on trying to ban constituency counts. And to sort of set this issue up a little bit, there was legislation that passed that required disclosure of constituency counts. And we feel that at this point, there's no need to have a constituency count after that. But there's something else that legislation mandated, and that's disclosure after it's signed into law. Brad Johnson, who will pass out what he's done, he's voluntarily disclosed what is in his constituency count, what he's received, what he spent it on. He's the only statewide elected official in the state of Montana to do that. It's an example of Republicans leading on the issue of integrity and on the issue of openness. There's a lot of questions surrounding, and I've got a timeline here around the governor's constituency count. And I have to be honest, there are some hard questions that need to be asked on the second floor about this constituency count. On February 11th of 2005, I'm going to go through this timeline because I think it's important before Roy gets up and talks about his legislative initiative. Roy Brown and Bob Keenan called for a full accounting of the governor's ball funds. We wanted to know who gave the governor's ball and where it went. The governor then, on March 11th of 2005, announced that he hired a CPA to go through an audit and prepare a report. Well, we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And finally, by August of 2005, there still was no report. So the Montana Republican Party put up a little ticker on their website and said, how many days since we've seen this financial disclosure report from the governor's ball? Nothing, nothing, nothing. 5 days later, all of a sudden, here comes the disclosure where the governor admits transferring almost $50,000 from the governor's ball funds into his constituency account. But he gives no accounting of what dollars particularly went in there, whether they were corporate dollars, which are illegal under Montana law to be spent on elections, whether it was personal money from big individuals writing big checks, and where that money was spent. And we know it was $46,000, and the governor's sort of been all over the map consequently as we followed up as to where that money was spent. First, he said on December 18th, 2006, that a third of the over $46,000 was spent on travel for the First Lady. But then his office said there are no details. We have no details to verify any of that. So then on January 2nd, the legislature convenes, and Senator Brown and others start talking about introducing legislation to regulate these. Lo and behold, the governor's on board. He says, oh yeah, we got to reform this constituency account problem. But he still wants those records from his own account. So Senator Brown introduces legislation on February 6th that there was all sorts of bills. Senator Brown's was to ban constituency accounts. They're going through the process, and on February 26th, Secretary of State Brad Johnson offers a full accounting of his constituency fund. Full accounting, ingoing and outgoing, receipts and expenditures. He does it voluntarily. He does it the right way. He does it the Montana way. Still silence on the second floor, the other end of the second floor, silence. The Commissioner of Political Practices, an appointee of the governor, questioned the legality of the existence of these very funds. Silence. Silence at the other end of the second floor. May 9th, Kentucky Derby, Montana National Legislators meeting. Governor goes to the Kentucky Derby for a big fundraiser for National Democrats. An article was written, and he says, hey, didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. I didn't spend any money for my re-election campaign, and my constituency account didn't pay for it. 4 days later, the Sands legislation is signed into law, which finally puts some limits and disclosure requirements on constituency accounts. But it also requires that quarterly reports must be issued. The Political Practice Commissioner must require financial disclosure of what's in a constituency account. 4 days after the Kentucky Derby, the governor admitted the existence of a constituency fund because he said, I didn't use my constituency fund to pay for this. During the Republican convention on June 23rd, a newspaper article appeared after Secretary of State Brad Johnson again said, why is there this deafening silence at the other end of the hallway? I keep talking about this. They keep getting drugged, kicking and screaming into even addressing the constituency fund issue. At that point, the governor then reverses course yet again and says, well, I haven't had a constituency fund for months. So which is it? Did you spend a third of the money on your wife's travel? Or 3 months later, where you said, well, the majority of it went to cover travel costs. Then a few weeks after that, you said, well, I have one, but I didn't use it to pay for my travel to Kentucky Derby. Then 5 weeks later, now you're saying you haven't had one in months. At the very least, if you do simple math, $46,000 was transferred into the account. Even by his own admission, a third of that was spent on travel for the First Lady. Maybe it's all proper. We just don't know, because he won't disclose it. That leaves $31,000 sitting in there that there's been zero accounting for how it's been spent. That's all we're asking for. Nobody's alleging that the governor has done anything wrong with it. We're not alleging that he's misused it, misspent it. We're just saying, sunshine and light bulbs. Follow Brad Johnson's lead. Follow the lead of Montana Republicans. We need to remove this cloak of secrecy over state government, the way business is being done here. And this is one of the planks in our reform package. We are putting forward today a code of conduct. And we're going to lead on it. And Senator Brown's going to talk a little bit more about the importance of